We are ranking the 5 most overrated whiskeys you should avoid, and spotlighting 3 hidden gems that deliver far more flavor for your money. From celebrity-backed bottles that charge a premium to flashy packaging that hides mediocre spirits, this countdown exposes the tricks that waste your cash and reveals the overlooked bargains insiders swear by. Ready to see which bottle tops the worst offenders? Let us kick off the list with number 5. Number 5. Proper number 12, the celebrity tax trap. Proper number 12 burst onto shelves in 2018, riding a wave of hype fueled by Conor McGregor's name and a marketing budget bigger than its barrel room. The bottle promises Irish whiskey, but what you actually get is a blend that tastes young and unfinished, metallic grain, harsh ethanol, and a thin, almost watery texture. There is no age statement, just a legal minimum and a lot of talk about heritage. Reviewers consistently score it in the high 70s, with most calling out the lack of complexity and a finish that disappears as fast as your patience. At around $35, you are not paying for mature whiskey, you are paying the celebrity tax. Skip the endorsement and reach for Jameson or Bushmills instead. Both deliver smoother, more balanced pours for less money, and you will not be funding anyone's next yacht. That is the real value test. Willett Pot Still Reserve is the ultimate trophy bottle for people who shop with their eyes, not their palate. That tall, ornate decanter shaped like a copper pot still adds an extra $5 to $10 of cost at the distillery, and you are the one footing the bill. But crack it open, and the letdown is immediate. The bourbon inside is non-age stated, legally at least 4 years old, and it clocks in at 94 proof. Reviewers call it grassy, yeasty, and thin, with a finish that is more damp wood than caramel. Some batches are passable, others taste like a science project gone sideways. For around $55, you are paying top-shelf prices for a mid-shelf experience, just so your bar cart looks fancy. It is a conversation starter, sure, but nobody comes back for a second pour. The bottle dazzles, the whiskey does not. Basil Hayden's sits on the shelf at nearly $50, wrapped in copper and parchment, promising a refined pour. But behind the premium branding is a bourbon that is watered down to the legal minimum, just 80 proof, or 40% alcohol by volume. That is the lowest proof allowed for straight bourbon in the US, and it shows. The whiskey drinks light and thin, with barely any finish to speak of. Every sip feels like you are tasting a ghost of what could have been. This isn't a question of bad ingredients. The high rye mash bill is the same one Beam uses for Old Grandad. The difference is simple. Old Grandad brings the heat and the flavor at a higher proof, while Basil Hayden's is deliberately diluted to chase the widest possible audience. The result is a whiskey that gets lost in a cocktail and disappears neat. For the price, you are buying a name and a label, not a full-bodied bourbon. If you want real flavor, leave this bottle on the shelf and grab its bolder sibling instead. Hudson Whiskey NY built its reputation on a shortcut. They used tiny new oak barrels, sometimes as little as 5 gallons, instead of the standard 53-gallon barrel. The logic was simple. Faster aging means more bottles to sell. But whiskey is not fooled by math. Small barrels crank up the surface area, so the spirit soaks up tannins and wood flavors way too fast. The result is a bourbon that tastes like wet cardboard, green wood, and bitter oak, even though it is barely out of diapers. Reviewers slam both the old baby bourbon and the rebranded Bright Lights. Big bourbon for the same flaws: thin body, drying finish, and a raw, unfinished edge that no amount of warehouse bass speakers can fix. At $45, you are not getting innovation. You are getting a science experiment that failed. Most craft distillers learned this lesson a decade ago, but Hudson keeps charging premium prices for whiskey that tastes rushed and rough. For that money, you deserve something that has seen real time in a real barrel. Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 is the king of autopilot whiskey buying, and that is exactly how they want it. The brand spends more than $100 million a year on advertising, plastering that black label everywhere, from NASCAR to billboards in Tokyo. It works. Jack sells about 15 million cases worldwide every year, more than most distilleries could dream of. But behind the global icon status, you're getting a whiskey that is just average, especially for the price. The liquid inside is charcoal-filtered Tennessee whiskey, usually bottled at 80 proof in the US, with no age statement, and a typical range of 4 to 7 years in the barrel. That might sound respectable, until you look at what else is on the shelf. For the same money or less, you can grab a bottle of Evan Williams Bottled in Bond, 100 proof, at least 4 years old, and packed with real corn, rye, and oak flavor. In blind tastings, Jack gets outclassed by these so-called budget bourbons every time. The truth is, you're paying for the name, the label, and a marketing machine that never stops running. If you want actual flavor instead of advertising, skip the Old No. 7 and put your money into a bottle that is built for taste, not just brand loyalty. Old Grandad 114 does not win any beauty contests on the shelf. Its squat brown bottle looks like something from a pharmacy in 1980, not a collector's display. But open it up, and you get a pour that insiders swear by. 114 proof, high rye bourbon that delivers a wallop of flavor for about $30. That is 57% alcohol by volume, almost unheard of at this price. The first sip hits with peanut shell and caramel, then rolls into a spicy rye kick and a long, warming finish. Blind tasting panels routinely rank it above bottles twice the price, and bartenders keep it stashed for themselves, calling it the ugly duckling that outperforms the pretty boys. It is not for everyone. Some folks find the proof too hot, and supply can be spotty. But if you want maximum flavor per dollar, Old Grandad 114 is the high-proof bargain that makes watered-down bottles look like a joke. Early times. Bottled in Bond is the cheat code most whiskey drinkers overlook. For about $25, you get a full liter of 100 proof bourbon that is guaranteed by law to be at least 4 years old, made in one season by a single distiller, and aged in a government-bonded warehouse. The Bottled in Bond label is not just a sticker, it is a promise of transparency and quality, dating back to 1897, before most brands on the shelf even existed. After 2020, Sazerac took over production and moved bottling to their Frankfurt facility, but the Bottled in Bond rules stayed ironclad. Every bottle lists the DSP number right on the label, so you know exactly where it came from. The whiskey inside delivers caramel corn, dark fruit, and oak, with enough proof to stand up in any cocktail or to sip neat. For value, nothing else comes close. 1 liter, 1 honest label, and a pour that punches way above its price. That is why it earns the number 2 gem spot. Mellow Corn wears its truth right on the label. Bright yellow, no frills, impossible to mistake for anything fancy. For about $15, you get a 100 proof straight corn whiskey that breaks every rule about what a serious bottle should look like. Heaven Hill has been bottling this oddball for decades, quietly letting bartenders and whiskey nerds do the advertising. Instead of chasing bourbon's new charred oak, Mellow Corn spends at least 4 years aging in used barrels, which keeps the spirit light in color while loading it with sweet buttery corn and vanilla. The mash bill is at least 80% corn, making it a rare find in a world obsessed with rye and wheat blends. Take a sip, and there is popcorn, caramel, and a creamy texture that punches far above its price tag. At 100 proof, it stands up in cocktails and surprises neat. Industry panels and blind tastings consistently score it in the high 80s, beating out bottles 3 times the price. Bartenders call it the ultimate fun pour, a cult classic that proves you do not need a fancy bottle or a celebrity behind the brand to deliver real flavor. For pure value and honest character, nothing else comes close. Across all 8 bottles, one pattern stands out. In whiskey, flashy marketing often hides forgettable liquid, while true value sits overlooked on the bottom shelf. Quality is not about celebrity or packaging, it is what is in the glass. In today's whiskey world, taste is the only hype that matters. Cheers.